If you've ever felt emotionally mature in relationships, but secretly exhausted by how much you give, this isn't strength. It's a wound you learned to survive with. Why does this feel like maturity when it's actually costing you intimacy? There is a quiet confusion many women live with for years. A feeling that something about love feels heavier than it should. That closeness somehow turns into responsibility. That being good at relationships doesn't actually feel good. And because nothing looks obviously wrong, the feeling gets dismissed. You tell yourself you're just independent. You're just emotionally intelligent. You're just not needy like other people. But beneath that explanation, there's often a quiet exhaustion that never fully goes away. This isn't about being broken, and it isn't about choosing the wrong partners. It's about a hidden emotional wound that disguises itself as strength, one that many women carry directly into their relationships, without ever realizing it was there. This is for emotionally intelligent women who are often described as strong, understanding, or low maintenance, yet keep finding themselves emotionally alone inside relationships. Women who are rarely chaotic, rarely dramatic, rarely reactive. Women who know how to regulate themselves, who know how to stay composed, who understand emotional nuance. You're the one people lean on, the one who gets it, the one who can see both sides. And yet, inside your closest relationships, you often feel like you're standing slightly outside of the warmth, present, involved, but not fully held. Not unloved, just unreceived. Most women like this don't recognize the pattern early. They just notice that love feels tiring, that attraction fades quietly, that intimacy never quite deepens the way it should. And years later, they look back and realize how often they were chosen for their stability, but rarely for their emotional depth. There's a specific emotional injury many women carry quietly. It doesn't look like trauma. It doesn't come with a dramatic story. There's no obvious event you can point to and say, that's where it happened. In fact, many women with this wound had relatively good childhoods. They were loved. They were cared for. They weren't abused. And that's why this wound goes unnoticed for so long. Because it doesn't feel like pain. It feels like normal. It blends into your personality. It becomes part of how you relate. It shows up as emotional maturity, empathy, composure, resilience. But the danger of this wound isn't that it hurts. The danger is that it feels functional. It works. It helps you keep relationships. It helps you avoid conflict. It helps you stay connected. But it also quietly teaches you something very specific about love. That your needs must be managed. That your depth must be contained. That your vulnerability must be rationed. And over time, that lesson shapes the way you love. At some point, often very early, you learned how to become emotionally stable, not because someone taught you, but because it kept things smoother. You learned how to read the room, how to sense emotional shifts, how to anticipate moods before words were spoken. You became good at regulating conflict, good at de-escalating, good at staying calm when others weren't. You understood that being easy made connection safer, that being self-sufficient reduced tension, that needing less made you easier to love. So you adapted. You became perceptive, emotionally attuned, low maintenance, and everyone around you benefited from that. People felt comfortable with you. Partners felt understood. Relationships felt stable. From the outside, it looked like emotional intelligence. But slowly, something began to shift. Intimacy stopped feeling mutual. Closeness started feeling like responsibility. You weren't being met. You were managing. And because you were good at it, no one questioned the cost, including you. At first, it's subtle. You're the one who holds space, the one who listens longer, the one who explains instead of expresses. You understand your partner's emotions before they understand them themselves. You know when to soften your voice, when to let things slide, when to wait. And you tell yourself, this is just what mature love looks like. But over time, the dynamic deepens. You notice that your partner relies on your steadiness, that they lean into your emotional regulation, that they feel calmer, safer, more grounded around you. Yet when you need reassurance, it feels awkward to ask. When you need emotional presence, it feels heavy to request. You don't want to disrupt the balance. You don't want to be too much. You don't want to change how you're seen. So you adapt again. And slowly, love stops feeling nourishing. Not because there's no affection, but because you're always giving more than you're receiving. You begin to feel important, but not cherished, needed, but not deeply known. And you start wondering why love feels like work. Psychologically, this pattern often forms in environments where emotional needs weren't consistently met. Not through cruelty, not through obvious neglect, but through emotional unpredictability, care that depended on timing, connection that depended on mood, attention that wasn't always available. You learned that emotional expression didn't always lead to emotional safety. So you adjusted. You became easier to be around, less demanding, more contained. You learned how to stay connected without asking too much. And because this adaptation helped you maintain closeness, it became automatic. No one told you that you were sacrificing something. You were praised instead for being mature, for being calm, for being independent. Your self-regulation was admired. Your emotional control was rewarded. And your unmet needs stayed invisible, not ignored, just unrecognized, including by you. This is the most unsettling part. This wound doesn't push people away. It attracts them. You're seen as emotionally safe, reliable, grounded. Partners feel comfortable with you. But comfort isn't intimacy. And safety without reciprocity eventually becomes distance. Because while you're holding space, no one is holding you. And this is why many emotionally intelligent women find themselves repeatedly drawn into relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. Not because they want distance, but because distance feels familiar. Because emotional self-containment feels safer than emotional exposure. Because being chosen for strength feels less risky than being seen in vulnerability. You rarely express emotional need directly. Instead, you offer understanding. You contextualize. You rationalize. You empathize. When something hurts, you explain it away. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, that your partner is trying, that you understand where they're coming from. And over time, you stop expecting to be emotionally met. Not consciously, just quietly. You lower the bar without realizing you're doing it. And slowly, you disappear inside your relationships. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just subtly. You stop sharing certain thoughts. You stop reaching for comfort. You stop imagining what it would feel like to be emotionally held without explanation. You are present, but not fully there. This isn't selflessness. It's self-protection disguised as strength. It's what happens when emotional maturity develops before emotional safety, when regulation replaces expression, when understanding replaces need. This strength kept you connected once, but now it may be keeping you unseen. because the same qualities that make you easy to love can also make it easy for others to forget that you need love too. Healing doesn't start by becoming less giving. It doesn't start by becoming colder, or more guarded, or emotionally distant. It starts by questioning why you learned that love required emotional self-erasure, why your depth had to be managed, why your needs had to be minimized, why safety had to be earned instead of offered. This isn't about blaming your past. It's about recognizing that what once kept you connected may now be limiting how deeply you're met. The hidden wound isn't that you feel deeply. It's that you learned early that your depth had to be controlled instead of received. And when emotional maturity is built on survival, it can look like wisdom while quietly costing you intimacy. If this spoke to you, this channel is for you. Subscribe, not for notifications, but because these conversations are meant to continue. If you know someone who carries this quietly, share it with them. And if you felt seen, leave a comment below. It helps this reach the people who need it. Stay soul iconic.